First of all, I would like to state quite categorically that I don't believe I was ever mental. That's why it's difficult for me to, when I'm talking with people, to know what to call the hospital I was in, because it was a mental hospital, but I still believe, and I believed then, that I wasn't mental in the sense that I had lost control of myself, that I was led by interior forces. The maze is a painting of the inside of my skull, which I painted when I was in England as a patient in Moseley and Northern psychiatric hospitals. It is a story of my life, well, in the sense that people tell stories by the fireplace to entertain their guests, trying to make them accept you. In this case, I wanted to be accepted as an interesting specimen.
I first met Bill Kurlek in 1953 when I was a psychiatrist in training at Maudsley Hospital, London. He was admitted to the wards where I was working in rather a hurry. Up till then, he'd been seen once or twice as an outpatient. But that particular day, the young doctor who'd been seeing him became alarmed. Bill had come up that day and had shown him some cuts on his arm. Now, he told the doctor that he'd inflicted these cuts himself with a razor blade. They'd been prompted by his extreme distress at his feelings of unreality. The young doctor thought that he was schizophrenic, which is psychiatric jargon for crazy. He saw himself as a lizard pinned to the ground with black crows waiting to make him their prey. That was how he felt toward the doctors.
When Bill first came to Maudsley Hospital, I met him first in my capacity as an occupational therapist, and at that time he was very disturbed indeed. He presented almost a schizophrenic-like picture. In fact, I think the first provisional diagnosis was schizophrenia. He appeared to be quite unable to relate to anybody at all. In speaking to people, he couldn't look them in the face. He was suspicious of everybody, extremely suspicious of everybody, depressed, very depersonalized, very quiet, very reserved, very shy, a certain amount of grimacing.
But he looked so completely lost. In fact, I've never seen anybody really quite so lost as he was, completely inadequate at that stage. And walking down the corridors, he used to cling to the wall. He was rather frightened to walk down the middle.
The thing that I seem to be conscious of was this feeling as if I could just have a good sleep, and I'd wake up all fresh instead of always this feeling of being always as if I needed more sleep. And a sort of a feeling of unreality. In my paintings, to get it across to doctors, I represented it by having a bag over my head, or alternatively, in trying so hard to get back to reality, I would represent myself as cutting myself right down to the bone so that I could realize that I'm really a human being like other people with real skeletons made of flesh and bones.
I used to visit him in his room, and if I didn't go there, he was very unhappy and felt he'd been deserted. And on one occasion, when I was going on leave, I told him I wouldn't be there for the next 2 weeks. And when I left the room, he got a razor blade and started to cut his arms with it.
One thing that increasingly struck me was his own pent-up, violent feelings. Because at that stage, one of my concerns was to help him to express these violent feelings, which were so successfully pent up that he looked superficially to be a very inhibited, shy, quiet individual, in which all the forces are petrified. And this really has got the implication of a bomb which is going to explode and unleash tremendous force.
Because my father wanted a manly son, I knew that I couldn't, so I tended to withdraw into myself. Because I was artistic, I guess I tended to be I had certain effeminate qualities. I guess this is, everybody knows that artists tend toward the softer and more sensitive things like women. I remember with my sister Winnie, I used to play with dolls, which was rather unusual. I used to cut dresses up for them. When I was a boy at school, part of the elements that contributed to the idea of the world as being a hostile place was this just the physical inability to compete with my schoolmates. The emphasis in Canada was on physical strength and athletic prowess, where I was just a scrawny weakling. I just seemed to withdraw more and more into myself. And at school, I had these people who I was scared to death of. And my father kept emphasizing that I wasn't manly enough. Not so many years ago that I used to perspire when I pick up the telephone. I had to talk a long time. Even now I feel a bit tense, because I associated telephoning with my father, who was it was a wall type telephone, and he would be able it was at his level. And driving, I dreaded driving a car because I knew my father expected me to do this manly sort of thing, which I felt I was a failure at.
Eat it, Tommy. Eat it. Let's.
He's using the wrong hand and he's using it upside down.
That's just the same as at home. That egg is just as good as you eating at home.
Well, I brought it from home.
That's your mother's brought it from home. Yeah, that's not a farm egg.
No, it could be.
Huh?
It could be a farm.
Could be from another farm. William doesn't like the farming. He was no good. He couldn't even drive the team of horses. I give it to him and he give it to somebody else. He don't want to drive horses, and he's no good for the tractor too. William was a different than those other two kids, Winnie and John. And when we moved to Manitoba, so he was 6.5 years, so we sent them to school. So they start going to public school, and public school was all English, and they didn't know how to talk English because we just talked to them Ukrainian until 7 years. They start talking, come from school, and it says it's everybody talking something that we don't understand. We had a fun out of that, and then we says, all right, you just keep going to school and you'll learn. So in about a year time, well, they was better student than any other kids in the school.
From the very beginning, I've always regarded him as a strong man, in the sense that he was, what shall we say, hard and ambitious. Material success to him was the thing that he thought once that he had those, then he could have all the other things. I guess he was, in that sense, he's extremely typical of the average immigrant or pioneer in this North America. He works fantastically hard on the farm. At one time, I used to resent work, especially since it even sometimes encroached on the free half day that he used to give us on Sunday. Always there was this two sides to him, that push and the pull, toward him and against him. I was terrified of my father and at the same time admired him.
When I come from the old country, my father wasn't so rich, to pay $140 for my ticket. My father has a friend in Canada here, and father found a man that he paid the ticket for me, $140. So I start making it. Boy, this was hard. Because the third year, the grasshopper comes and kill it all. I was cutting hay, and that was sun was just about set. And I saw that from the far away, it going just like a river, water. I didn't see that before. It's just like a water going and shiny, something shiny, and it's just like a waves, going. I says to my hired man, I says, what's that there? You see that? And he says, yeah, I don't know what's that. And then I saw it's coming here. And that was grasshoppers flying in the air, just about 5 feet from the ground, high. And they smells. They comes from miles and miles, maybe 100, 200 miles. And it was covered the ground that I couldn't see the ground, just grasshoppers. And when the sun set, there was 5, 6 grasshoppers on every stem of my grain. And they got the pliers and they just clip the head off and eat. And those there on the ground, it's eating. And I says, now what I'm gonna do? And then in 2 years after, that house which we built burned down. Well, I didn't have insurance on that. I was trying to save the money. And we didn't have a clothes because all the clothes we had, it's all burned in the house. After that, another time when we had depression, and we had a mortgage on that farm, and we couldn't pay mortgage, so the mortgage takes that farm from us, and we was chased from that house. That's why I didn't recommend my kids. I suggest my kids don't stay on the farm because that's the worst business, not in Canada, but in the whole world. Your depends from everything, from the climate, from the sun, from the moon, from the too much rain, from not enough rain, from the grasshoppers. It's everything against you.
You don't need the apple now because you'll eat your cake.
Oh, he doesn't like chocolate cake.
We have some cookies.
But I'd rather have an apple first.
What can I have a Kleenex, please?
Between us and my mother, there was not any of that. I wouldn't say anything sentimental. There was certainly no kissing. I knew that my mother was strict, but somehow, whenever it came between my father and mother, I seemed to side with her. It's hard talking about my mother. The thing that comes up is that there's not much to say.
Some of the earliest recollections I have of our first home was in Alberta, naturally. And I was sleeping in some sort of a cot. Now, what frightens me about that is that Will woke me up one night and he said to me, "Look at the turkey." I said, "What turkey?" And he says, "The turkey." His head was sticking up above the bed about so high. And I don't know whether there was a turkey there or not, but I thought I saw it too. The funny part was that when we told Dad and Mom about it the next morning, they laughed at us. I think Will felt very bad about that. I don't think he'd like to talk to them about such things anymore.
Nobody seemed to believe me on how real those things were. The fact that I could actually hear the turkey stamping on top of me, I could feel the imprint of her foot, and the hose with the sheep draped over one end of it, rocking on the bench beside the window. I could hear the bench creaking.
They was living upstairs, and I didn't have a time to go upstairs all the time. But one time I was trying to go upstairs, and I saw so many pictures on the walls that all kind of snakes and devils and priests and nurses and everything. So I was afraid to go there upstairs. So then I said, who draw all that? Who paint all that? And John laughing, and he says, William. And William started looking down because he was afraid that I'm gonna tell him not to do that again. But anyway, he says, yes, William says, yes, I did that. I says, well, don't do that anymore because you're wasting time and you wouldn't be able to study. Don't kill your time with that anymore. So after that, it was still worse for him because he's still doing it and he have to hide from me.
It was that I was not understood as being that particular type of person, an artist. That I was a budding artist and nobody seemed to realize it, not even myself sometimes. And I had particular sensitivities, and I almost caved in under that load.
Well, after high school, naturally the next step was to go to university because after all, Dad was only too anxious that we get a better education. Johnny naturally went to engineering, and Will didn't know what to take, so I guess arts is the safest thing. Dad tried to push him into medicine, but he just couldn't see himself in medicine. He took arts. After graduation, he couldn't find sense to anything, so he sort of took off. I suppose in these days he'd be a hippie. In those days, it was even more unusual, at least it was to our parents. They thought that it was just a terrible thing to do. Mother and Dad were terribly worried about him. Every time he came back for a short while, they would criticize him, they would beg him, so that he would settle down and at least start any kind of a job, anything, so that they wouldn't have to tell their friends, I suppose, that Will, after graduating from university, isn't doing anything.
So as soon as he finished 3 years university, so he says, I'm going to art school. I says, well, I thought you were going to the hospital, you would be a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist or something, whatever you like you could be. And he says, no, I don't like the dirty doctor's job and a lawyer's. It's a liar's, he says, and I like the job my own, and I want to be an artist. So he didn't want to listen to me. He finished his university, was graduate, and he went to Toronto to art school. He was in the art school in Toronto for 1 year, and after he visited us, and he says, I'm going to Mexico. So he went to Mexico. He was there for a year and a half. And after that, he went to England. And he says, I'm going to finish my art school in England. So he was there for 6 years.
finally I reached the point where the more I tried to, the harder I tried to figure things out just by sheer mental effort, the more things became tangled. The whole feeling of being a misfit, that the world was a hostile place, all emphasized by the things that had happened to me in the past, just made me more and more bitter.
What a piece of work is a man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals.
In the end, I just let things take their course. decided that logically, suicide was the quite the right thing to do, because if there is no afterlife, the only thing or group that could pass judgment on a suicide was society, and society had, so to speak, rejected me and had failed me. So I reasoned that what one life, more or less, in this cruel world didn't make all that much difference. I had this feeling of utter abandonment. Complete and utter abandonment in the universe, so to speak. The first ECT I got was after they rushed me to this emergency ward, and they pumped out my stomach, and they gave me a shock treatment. They decided finally to do something in that more drastic line. And I had been hoping to get something drastic. Like I heard about other patients getting it, and I was sure it would help my depression. Anyway, I sprained my back the first time, the convulsion. So after that I got the scoline drug as well, just before the shock. So that you get the feeling that you're completely stiff as a board and you can't move nothing, can't even cry for help. And I got to dread these sessions more and more. I had, I think, about 14 sessions. And while we were waiting, it was like going in an execution chamber, only executed 14 times. That some people, when they're on the verge of execution, repent. That was the word repentance. Strictly speaking, comes from the Latin, which means to rethink. So when you are really up against it, you really rethink really seriously. So I could see these other patients around me, and they were waiting for their turn. Their lips were moving, and I guessed that they were praying. So I started to try and do it too. So that's when I started on the uphill, I think. Since leaving the hospital, I've become more and more convinced that it was really spiritual crisis that I had gone through. It was a thing that I had to go through, and that after my conversion, I sort of found a place. I found an acceptance. Why I had this intense drive to prove that I needed to be cared for, or that I needed security is really hard for me to explain, other in terms of having perhaps missed it at home. And this is the channel. This is the way it was sort of channeled into this situation. But I still think that back of it all was this, what I call the spiritual crisis, that I had to really find a proper home, a proper what you might call it, a proper father for a mature person.
When Bill ultimately decided to become a Catholic, this, for me, was a great joy and a triumph too. I received him into the church on the feast of Our Lady of the Lord in the year 1957 in this little church. I was a little worried about Bill at times. One of my greatest worries was that he was a very impractical young man. I knew that his great desire was to settle down, to have a family, and to support them. I know that I am a priest, and Bill himself at times shattered me. My ideals should be very high, but I even found Bill's higher still. I mean, it was all very fine to be illustrating the pages of the gospel, but this was not going to provide a home or food or bring up a family. And to me, he was a tremendous inspiration. I could come home in the evening, be looked after by a housekeeper with a good meal. When I went to see Bill, I saw him sitting there, primitively eating an apple, ordinary piece of bread, nothing more, but still happy with that. I mean, he was, in a sense, a fool for Christ's sake.
I had the wrong impression. I thought that religion was a thing of consolation, that it was a matter of feeling, whereas I found out later that religion was a matter of conviction, that it was like knowing that 2 and 2 equals 4. I later found out that religion can bring consolation, and I have felt it, so I know. But it's a thing that comes and goes. Feelings are things that come and go. Just as in marriage, love may come and go, but the marriage remains.
To me, Bill was really a saint, in every sense of the word.
The whole of Christian religion revolves around the idea of to lose yourself, and then in the process of losing yourself in others or for others, you find yourself again. Once I did go through the conversion, then I started a long climb up of getting out of the self-involvement, getting rid of my the selfish aspects of, introversion, looking into myself and analyzing myself. Actually had been like going down a dead-end street. You get more and more involved in yourself, and finally you find yourself up against a blank wall. You can't go any further.
One thing that he wrote at that time to Dr. Carstairs was that, in connection with myself, that he was afraid, one of the reasons he was afraid of relating to me, or allowing me to help him, in fact, was lest later on, out of gratitude, he should feel forced, in fact, to marry me out of gratitude for what I'd done for him. This, I think, obviously shows a tremendous amount lack of insight in the situation. He certainly, I think, felt he was in love with me at one stage. I don't myself think that he ever really was in love with me in an ordinary sort of way. This is on a conscious level, on a rather superficial level. On a slightly deeper level, I've always felt very strongly that I, in fact, was playing the role of his mother, the good mother, whom he'd always wanted, whom he'd always needed. And eventually he was able to come to feel towards his own mother, possibly through his relationship with me, in a more normal sort of way.
He was quiet. That's what I think about him, that I should have looked at him more closely. But I guess I didn't understand much, you know. I think when a child is quiet, you have to be with him more and talk to him and all that. Well, I didn't have the time. I had to work. Oh, I don't know what to say that. I just feel bad about it all. When I look back, I feel bad that I didn't have the money then to take better care of them. That's how I feel. I was hoeing in the garden. I don't know if she was 3 years old or what. She didn't want to stay in the house alone. So I was hoeing there, and then she got cold by me, and she got tired of me staying there, and she didn't tell me to go in the house, but she just says, "Mama, throw that hoe down. Mama, throw that hoe down." And I didn't want to listen to that, you know, because I had to do it. I had to do the hoeing. And now I see this our children. If their children would do that, they would just do them. They would just listen to them and do what the child says. And I didn't do that. And I feel sorry for that now. She was cold. She was shivering by me. But yet I thought that work has to be done. Then I thought I didn't have time. But now, when I think back, after that, I think it was that year when there was that crop failure, the grasshoppers ate, that hoeing that I did wasn't worth anything anyway. So now I'm thinking back and saying maybe that wasn't worth that what I was hoeing, because the grasshoppers came and ate it anyway. So for those things I feel sorry now.
What do you think is that was a good you done it or bad? How you could know that these our children are done good to the kids? That they are teaching them like that?
I think they are overdoing it, and we were underdoing it. You know,
yeah, all right.
I think so.
But our children was raised good, and they never been sick, and they are not sick. We teach them maybe good that time when you are not say that I'm not going to the house because I am gonna do this job. They give the mother all kind of a question and trying even to fool them.
Oh, I know, but in that case,
they want them to do this and this, what they think. And they are young.
Yes,
and
I know.
we are parents.
I know.
We're supposed to know what could be done and what can't be done.
Yes, but in that case of Nancy, I think I was to blame because she was cold. You know how she was.
I know.
So she was cold.
She was.
And I'm not telling like I see these other ones, our children. They say any little thing the child has, a little scratch there and it cries and it goes.
Yeah, all right.
But
maybe this only happened. Maybe that's why our children was good after that, because they was trained that way.
But that's the way I think.
They was training that way, and if we says that you are going to school and you have to be a good and you have to pass grade. So they done.
There's a limit to that.
All right.
I think in that case I was wrong. It doesn't matter what. In that Nancy's
You
case.
saw it now.
Later on, especially since my conversion to Christianity, I come back full circle again, so to speak, and have much more a better understanding of what they were up against, and a better understanding of divine guidance. Even the worst times in the hospital were really necessary things to go through. All this was, in a sense, ordained by God, that I should go through all this pain and suffering, and even this stay in hospital, even the attempt to take my life, so that I would become purged. I think God wanted me to do this Passion series, and therefore He allowed me to go through a certain amount of suffering, so that the suffering that Christ went through would be represented realistically. Once I had gone over that hurdle, then everything started to make sense, and even the deprivation of affection from my parents took on a completely new meaning, so that now all the old bitterness, all the old even hate, you might say, which came up in my early paintings, especially the ones in the hospital, are gone.
I guess just push them over. Cup, yeah, for wheels. A cup.
When we were first married, I think Bill was quite surprised that everything wasn't going to be perfect, that it wasn't a bed of roses, and I often used to say to him, "Aren't you happy?" And he wouldn't say anything, so I knew that he really wasn't that happy, or he would say, sometimes he would even say, "Well, no, I'm not very happy," that everything wasn't perfect, and he seems quite surprised, and I thought, well, that's normal in marriage, that you can't have everything perfect, and he is a perfectionist in many ways, in wanting everything perfect. Now we have a talk once a week. His psychiatrist suggested that we have this talk. We put time aside and have a talk for an hour every week. And that's when he airs his problems, because for the first few years of our marriage, he would just keep it all bottled up inside, and he would get a very definite look on his face. I can hardly describe it, but very sad and withdrawn look. It was a very definite look that I haven't seen for a long time now.
Oh, go on, you're a big kisser. Hey, you're gonna give Dad a big kiss? Not tonight. Too bad. You gonna give Mommy a kiss? Come on, nice big kiss. Oh, you're a limit. You're the limit, Tommy. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Where's Tommy gone? Yeah. Night, night. Why? It's daytime.
Where's your blanket? Where's your blanket? Whenever he loses his temper, I'm pleased. The first time he lost his temper, he banged on the dining room table, you know, and he felt worse about it than I do. He doesn't like that kind of thing. And I'm more open, and if I'm mad, I let him know, and he thinks I've got quite a temper, and I've never known anybody in my life before to say that I've had a temper. But, and then another time, about 2 years ago, he was so mad, I don't know whether he chased me up the stairs or he was really showed anger, you know, but those things never upset me. I was always very pleased after. It's only about 3 times that I would say that he's really got mad, you know. Maybe twice he banged on the table at different times, and the other time I just remember running up to the bedroom and shutting the door, and he came in, and I don't know whether he actually shook me, but he certainly wanted to shake me. I can't remember. He might have shaken me even. But they were, to me, occasions that I was happy about because I could see at last he was letting loose. A priest told me this once when I was talking to a priest about him. He said that he is really very close to God. I don't know whether he's told you that he does fasting a lot. And he's even fasted for 3 weeks at a time. Just in the last month, he's just had 1 meal a day. He doesn't eat the other 2 meals at all. But this priest told me that he was very close to God. And so some of the reasons he won't argue or lose his temper, he feels that he's doing the wrong thing, that he's actually committing a sin by losing his temper. And he doesn't realize that it might improve his mental health if he did do a little bit more. But he's too much of a perfectionist that way.
This is a new experience for me. I didn't, like with the other children, I never got around to holding them on my knee like this, but this one seems to have done it quite naturally. And he comes up to me and lifts up his one leg and starts, That's his way of saying, take me up there. I just can't seem to refuse him. Now I give him a pen that's a dud. It's one that's already written itself out. And even if he does scratch my painting and doesn't, I can easily patch it up. And I don't think that paintings are that sacred to that extent. Part of my theory of art, I guess, that I think more in terms of what the medieval artists used to regard it as a craft rather than an art, and I let the art take care of itself.
Well, we are very proud of that William is an artist, and he got good just because he got good success on that. He got a good luck. He's a real good artist now, but I still don't think that he will be a lot better if he'll be a doctor or a lawyer or something else. But well, I mean that he could make more money than he could make on this business. He's working hard now, and he's not getting very much for that.
Are we gonna put a pumpkin in the freezer?
I take every opportunity to disown my former bitterness against my father, that I realized I had done wrong.
You didn't finish your peanut butter though either, Barb. Why?
6 cents is more than 2 pennies. Well, Steve has only got 2 pennies, so I get 6 cents. If I save these for Christmas, then at Christmas I can buy them. You can give them to the pork shoulder. I'm giving them to the pork shoulder. What's that? I'm giving them to the pork shoulder.
The poor children.
Oh. Because we're going to buy something for the pork shoulder.
Dad's going to give it to you.
The idea that even though things are comfortable now physically, there will be shortly coming a time when Bless us, O God, and these your gifts, which we are about to receive from your bounty, through Christ our Lord. Amen.
May God provide for the needs of others. In the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Can I have some wine, Father?
Yes.
How come Jen and her?
Aren't you eating? Well, I think they'll eat later, Stephen. Maybe they're not so hungry.
like a phone.